I've titled my sermon, Jesus Couldn't Be Kept Down. So we've just, over the last a couple of weeks ago, we celebrated Easter. And the fact that Jesus, he lived the perfect life because we can't, we aren't able to. He was arrested, he was taken before an unfair trial. This is what we celebrate, isn't it? He was beaten, tortured, he was humiliated. And worst of all, he had his own father turn his face away from him. He died because of the wrong I have done and you have done. He did this because he loves us, he loves you, he loves me. What amazing grace and love that is. It was the only way of salvation. There couldn't be any other way. It was the only way that our relationship with God could be restored back to him. But also, this was God's plan. It was his way, it was his plan before the foundation of the world. And he did it, Jesus did it because he loves his Father and is obedient to him. Are you obedient to your Father God? Are you willing to do whatever, whenever it is asked of you? Whatever it takes. It could mean giving up a job. Something I'm battling with a little bit at the minute. You know, it may mean you lose friends. It may mean you lose family. It could even cost your own life. But are you willing to submit completely to God, just like Jesus did, in any circumstance? Okay. So why was it this particular time, Easter, that Jesus was killed and not other times before? Why was it now? And maybe you've wondered the same. And if we look in Matthew chapter 2, when Herod finds out that Jesus has been born, in verse 7 and 8 it says this: Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I may go and worship him. So Herod, now he sent his Magi to look for Jesus, to report back, unknown to the Magi that Herod wanted to kill Jesus. So have you wondered why Herod didn't just say to the Magi, look, I'm going to get my army and I'm going to come with you to look for him, so I can kill him myself. Perfect opportunity. You know, Jesus would have been at his most vulnerable. He would have been a little boy, no match for a king and his army. Yet he didn't go. Why? And Herod ended up dying himself then, later on, so opportunity gone. Okay? So recently in work, I'm a behaviour assistant and I have a room, and we get all the naughty kids down. When they're naughty in class, they get sent down. Okay, so I was in the room, and there was this one child. She was there with me for the day, and it was break time. And at break time, we send them to another room now for their detentions. Okay, so break time came, and I sent her off to a different room. But she decided to go do her own thing, and she went to her household where they have food. Searched for a particular girl she didn't like and attack her and beat her up quite badly. Okay? She had an opportunity to find this girl. She'd obviously been thinking about it, planning it, okay, while we were in the room, and she took it. Jesus was a threat to Herod's power and authority. And he'd obviously thought about killing Jesus. And he had an opportunity to do it. But he didn't take it. And that opportunity went. You know, there might be times where you have opportunities to speak out for Jesus, to stand up for him, share the gospel with others, but you don't take them. I know I sometimes miss opportunities and they go, they disappear. And you may never have that opportunity again. Herod never did. Okay? So does anyone know how many attempts were made on Jesus' life before he was actually killed? Anyone got an idea how many times people tried to kill him? 5? Not far off. Say you might know.
I do know, yeah, because I've read it.
So there's 8 attempts on Jesus' life, okay, before we actually did that. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly mention just 5 of them, alright? One text was when Jesus placed himself above the Pharisees' level authority, and they didn't like that. Okay, so in John 5:16-18, so because Jesus was doing these things on the Sabbath, the Jewish leaders began to persecute him. In his defense, Jesus said to them, "My Father is always at his work to this very day, and I too am working." For this reason, they tried all the more to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. They tried to kill him. They were there with him, but they didn't. Why? Surely it wasn't that hard. Okay, he was there. Another attempt was when Jesus was teaching at the tabernacle about there was division over who Jesus was. In John 7:44, some wanted to seize him, but no one laid a hand on him. Because of the division, the Pharisees again wanted to seize him, wanted to kill him. But what happened? No one laid a hand on him. Why? The third attempt then, Jesus was telling the Pharisees they weren't true descendants of Abraham. At John 8:59, at this, they picked up stones to stone him, but Jesus hid himself, slipping away from the temple grounds. You know, surely someone must have managed to get a stone thrown in somewhere. You know, he was there talking to them. You know, he couldn't have been that quick to get away. No, he managed to hide himself, get out of the grounds, out of the temple grounds. Why? Fourth time then was when Jesus was telling the Jews that he was the Messiah. John 10:39. Again, they tried to seize him, but he escaped their grasp. They nearly had him this time. They had him in his grasp, but he got away again. Why? And then finally, fifth time was when Jesus called out his hometown for their unbelief. Luke 4:28-30. All the people in the synagogue were furious when they heard this. They got up, drove him out of the town, and took him to the brow of the hill on which the town was built, in order to throw him off the cliff. But he walked right through the crowd and went on his way. You know, he was there at the edge of the cliff. People probably thought, right, we've got him, now they're scared him. He's on the edge of the cliff. What happens? He walks straight through him and goes on his way. That's how. Why? So why was it then that they just couldn't get Jesus at these particular times? For me, John chapter 8:20, this sums it up, and it says this. He spoke these words while teaching in the temple courts near the place where the offering was set. Yet no one seized him, because his hour had not yet come. It didn't happen then because it wasn't the right time. It wasn't the hour that was planned. It had to happen at the perfect time. And that was planned between the Father, the Son and the Spirit before the foundation of the world. Not a second before, not a second after. There wasn't anything that was going to stop that happening. His plan, his way, couldn't be stopped. It will always happen. And we see this in Job 42:2. I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. In other words, whatever God plans, it will happen. It can't be stopped by anyone or anything. Right, so last Saturday, okay, a few of us went to Principality Stadium to watch rugby. It's called Judgment Day. Okay, you get to watch 2 rugby games for the price of 1. And it happens every year. And now we had planned, a few of us had planned 3 years ago to go. And a friend planned it for my 40th and for Mike's 50th. We bought the tickets, but then COVID happened, and we couldn't go until last week. Our plans have been spoiled, and they've been thwarted. We had to change them. God will have a plan for your life, and if that's the case, it will happen. No COVID, no unexpected circumstance, no will of man will ever stop it happening. There isn't anything unexpected to God, so there isn't anything that can stop him doing his plan. So then I said about my title, Jesus couldn't be kept down. So why couldn't he be kept down? We've seen 8 attempts on his life before he was actually crucified. No matter how hard these people tried to kill Jesus, they couldn't. If we look back at what was read, John 10:17 to 18, this tells us exactly why Jesus could not be kept down, could not be kept in the tomb. And it says this: "The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life, only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down on my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father." He couldn't be kept down because no one knocked him down. The reason he went to the cross was because he chose to go to the cross. No one took his life from him. He gave it up. He laid it down himself. He has the power and authority from his Father to take it up again. What power and authority that is. What mercy and love. Now, I don't know if you were all here last week, but we heard a really amazing testimony from Kath. She was in Dubai, and she felt that she should go into the prisons to speak to the women there and try to help them. And she did. She went in. She chose to go in, which meant she could choose to come back out whenever she wanted. She didn't have to stay there. She chose to come out. However, if you remember that while she was out there, she actually did get arrested and put in prison by the police. She didn't choose to be arrested. Quite likely protested her innocence, but she was put into prison. She didn't choose to go there this time, so she couldn't choose to come out. Jesus chose to be arrested. He chose to be beaten. He chose to be crucified. He chose it so that we can have our sins forgiven, that we, me, you, can be forgiven of everything. He chose to be buried in a tomb. He chose to come out again. Even when there's a massive guarded seal stone over that tomb, he still couldn't keep him down. Do you see that Jesus chose to go to the cross for you? Do you see he chose to come out to the tomb so that you can rise to be with him? Do you see that it wasn't that anyone put him on the cross? He chose to go there. He chose to go there for you and me. So you may be thinking now, well, yeah, but Judas would have known exactly where Jesus was at that time. So he could, he could take the soldiers, he knew where he was, so that the soldiers could take Jesus away to be killed. So it's about the soldiers. But don't you find it odd, after all the other failed attempts to kill him, it just so happens they manage it this time. Okay, so why? Why now? If we look at Matthew 26, chapter 26, verse 45, this is after the third time of Jesus coming and seeing his disciples sleeping in the garden. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners." It couldn't have been any of those other times, those 8 attempts, because it wasn't the hour. It wasn't the right time. It hadn't come. That wasn't the plan of when it was supposed to happen. That wasn't the chosen time. It couldn't happen. And also, towards the end of the verse, if you notice, it said he was delivered into the hands of sinners. So when you buy something off Amazon, okay, the courier or the postman will come and deliver it to you. You don't go and pick it up. In the same way, Jesus was delivered to the soldiers. He was given them. It was like God saying, "Here we are, here's my son, have him." It wasn't anything to do with the soldiers arrested. He was given. It wasn't the soldiers came to force him. He wasn't forced, he was given. He didn't walk through them like he had previously. He could have. He didn't slip away and touch. He could have. No, he went silently without a fight, as peacefully as you can imagine. Can you imagine walking along the street, a gang of men come up and start pushing you, hitting you, swearing and screaming at you, knowing that if you don't try to do something, it's going to end badly, isn't it? You're going to get seriously hurt. You would do everything in your power to get away. You would shout, scream, kick out. Your survival mode would kick in. Jesus had done nothing wrong. Didn't deserve anything that was going to happen to him. And he knew what was going to happen. He knew the suffering he was going to endure. But he chose to go willingly and silently because he loves his Father and he loves you and me. That's why he couldn't be kept down in that sealed tomb forever. He chose to be there so he could choose to come out. We look quickly at Matthew 27 and 27 and 31. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. Then they twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand. Then they knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spat on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. After they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. I bet the Pharisees were rubbing their hands together thinking, yes, this time we've got him. We finally, they're watching the soldiers beat him. They're watching him, they're watching Jesus being humiliated. They're watching his skin being torn to shreds with the whips in front of their eyes. They saw him nailed to a cross and suffocate and die. They must have been thinking, this is it, we've got him. No one is he's not getting up from this. This is it. Game over for Jesus. So have any of you heard or seen the film Rocky Balboa? Anyone? Yeah? So it's Sylvester Stallone, isn't it? He plays Rocky, who's a boxer. Okay, and there's about five of the films. And at the end of every one, he would fight a much bigger, harder, tougher, smarter boxer. Okay? And every round, Rocky would get punched, he would get beaten, be black and blue. He would be punched so much in the eyes that they would have swollen, he couldn't see. He'd be bleeding from his nose because it was broken, his legs were all wobbly. And it would have looked like that if you could just blow on him, and he would have gone down and never got up. That's how badly beaten. But always, in the end of the film, the last one, when this was going on, Rocky's music, and I'm sure you know his music, would start up, and he would start fighting back. And he would start beating this much better, bigger boxer than him, and end up knocking him down and knocking him out and winning the fight. So when he looked all over for Rocky, he just couldn't be kept down. No matter how hard the boxer tried hitting him, he just couldn't keep him down, and Rocky won in the end. And drawing to the close now. Now that's just a cheesy illustration to an ending of a film. But there was nothing cheesy about Jesus' death. It was real. The beatings he suffered for me and you, the blood, the torn skin, it was all real. It very much happened. The soldiers gave it their best shot, didn't they? They put him on the cross, they beat him to keep him down, to keep him dead and buried. They sealed, they put a guard in the tomb to make sure he stayed there. And just when everyone thought it was all over, Jesus comes back. He rises, destroying the worst enemy, the toughest enemy, the biggest enemy of all ever, death. There was no keeping him in the tomb because he wasn't put there by anyone. He chose to go there himself, which meant he could choose to come out himself. What power and authority that was given to him by his Father for people like us. Jesus had to choose to die. so he could choose to rise. And he had to choose to die so he could defeat death. It now has no hold over us spiritually. And we see this in 1 Corinthians 15, 54 and 55. When the perishable has been clothed with the imperishable, and the mortal with the immortality, then the saying that is written will come true. Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? Death's been defeated. It's lost this sting, it's lost its victory. It's got no power over us because Jesus chose to die. He chose to rise so that we one day will rise with him. But unfortunately, even for those that deny Jesus as their Saviour and reject him, death isn't the end for them. Although they wish it was, as they will spend eternity in torment, wishing they had trusted Jesus. So let's rejoice in this truth together now. Let's praise Jesus that he chose to go to the cross and he chose to come out because he loves me and you. Does this excite you? Do you realize death has been defeated? There is no need to fear it now. Do you realize that Jesus chose to do all this for you and me to have eternal life? Amen.